Now the warriors of winter give a cold triumphant shout. And all that stays is dying, and all that lives is getting out. You see the geese in chevron flight, flapping and a-racing on before the snow. They've got the urge for going, they've got the wings to go, and they get the urge for going when the meadow grass is turning brown, and summertime is falling down, winter closing in. But I'll ply the fire with kindling, pull the blankets to my chin, and I'll lock the vagrant winter out and bolt my wandering in. I'd like to call back summertime and have her stay for just another month or so. She's got the urge for going, I guess she'll have to go. She's got the urge for going, and she gets the urge for going when the meadow grass is turning brown, and all her empires are falling down, and winter closing in. And I get the urge for going when the meadow grass is turning brown, and summertime is falling down.
From the 1920s.
Oh, the cuckoo is a pretty bird. She wobbles as she flies.
To the 1940s.
This land is your land, and this land is my land.
To the 60s.
All men are false, says my mother.
To today.
Well, I'm gonna send thee 3 by 3, 3 for the Hebrew children.
Old and new folk. The Village Listen is a journey. Sirius XM.
Too old to wrangle or ride on the swing. You beat the triangle and curse everything. If dirt was a kingdom, then you'd be the king. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail. Our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and pull out the light. with your snake oil and herbs and your liniment too. You can do anything that a doctor can do, except find a cure for your own goddamn stew. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. The cook fire's out, the coffee's all gone, the boys are up and we're raising the dawn. You're still sitting there all lost in a song, on the goodnight trail, on the loving trail. Our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light. Yeah, I know that someday I'll be just the same, wearing an apron instead of a name. No one can change it and no one's to blame. The desert's a book wrote in lizards and sage. It's easy to look like an old torn out page, faded and cracked with the colors of age. On the goodnight trail, on the loving trail, our old woman's lonesome tonight. Your French harp blows like a lone ball and calf. It's a wonder the wind don't tear off your skin and get in there and blow out the light.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. Hi. Oh, hello, friends. I am in my unusual spot here in my crazy office. I thought that for a change, instead of having a black screen behind me, y'all could see what chaos I usually live in. But welcome to Farm Virtual Connections. And this is our first webinar or peer session or live streamed event that we have done for a couple of months now. We took a break from our Tuesday Tech Talks to start planning the conference. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, which I don't think is anybody who's here in this room, I'm pretty sure every last one of you are familiar with us, but the Folk Alliance Region Midwest is the region of the Folk Alliance International in the Midwest, as it says, and we've been holding these virtual sessions since a year ago, April, and much thanks to Charlie Mossbrook, our farm board president, who the minute COVID told us we couldn't do any more gigging and go outside, said, hey, let's have a peer group session. And peer group sessions evolved into some really amazing conversations over the last year. So we're thrilled and happy to see so many of you returning. This conversation that we're going to have today about activism and songwriting is for everybody, whether you consider yourself a political songwriter or an activist of any sort. And I'm super excited that we have Pete Kronowitt here with us. Brant Miller, who's in the room, our friend from Nashville, introduced me to Pete several months ago, and we have been planning to do this for a while. And then Pete and I met again recently on a Folk Alliance peer group, and we just made it happen. So even though we are in the throes of planning a really amazing Farm Virtual Connections gathering the weekend of October 28th through 30th. I hope you all have that on your calendar. We'll be throwing some links in the chat so that you can make sure you register. Registration opened officially yesterday. And boy, Danny Goodband, you are on it. We opened registration at 12 o'clock noon. At 12:09, our first registration came in. So thank you, Danny. Thank you for being on top. I feel like there's got to be some kind of prize for that, but there's still plenty of time, and we'll talk more about that at a future meeting. So most of you should know the rules of Zoom by now, but this is going to be a brief talk, an introduction by Pete, and then this is going to be a peer group session that we are live streaming out to the world. So, you know, hopefully you don't mind your face being out there, and we'll have a great conversation. And if you want to share, you'll be asked to raise your hand. Hopefully you all know the raise hand feature, but this is a small enough group that I think we can do the wiggle hand as well. I know I'm forgetting to say something, and but I do want to also introduce Charlie Mossbrook again, because he's going to be moderating the conversation after we turn it over to Pete to share his talk. Pete's the founder of an organization called Face the Music Collective, and they're doing some really amazing work where they're using their songwriting to shine a light on and raise awareness of causes. And he's helping artists to do this through his organization. He's going to tell you a whole lot more about it. He's also a really fine songwriter of some great political and social justice topics. He's a super fun and engaging guy, and I'm really happy to have gotten to know him, and I'm super happy to introduce Pete to our farm community right now. So this is a replace the spotlight. You ready, Pete?
Ready.
Everybody wiggle your hands.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey. Well, it's so wonderful to be here. Annie, thank you so much for arranging this and allowing me to participate with the community. I'm really excited to be doing this. This is so much fun, and to see a couple of my friends here. Brant has been engaged with me since we met at Folk Alliance years ago, and he's been kind of like this mainstay to help this little collective Face the Music get started. And to see Michael and Nell also here, they've been engaged with the community discussion we have. But Michael Stock, it's such a pleasure to see you after performing on your show a couple times, and it's just and I really want to get to know everybody else and make this interactive. But there's so much that I want to convey that I talked to Annie about this, and I think the right way to do this is for me to start this with a short presentation. I'll use slides just to kind of guide me. I just think it'll be easier for me to get through this large amount of information that I've learned when I've really applied myself to this. So I'll start doing that, and then I'll ask for some input, and then hopefully we'll keep that to 15 or 20 minutes or something like that. That's what I'm expecting. So let me bring up here. There we go. I got to put this in screen show mode. All right, here we go. Okay. Let's try it again. There we go. Okay. So I know this is going to take up most of the screen. There's a way at the very top of your screen, I think, that you can put some comments in the chat. Charlie will be monitoring the chat and, giving some input of what your questions are. But since there's, 13 of us, I probably will, do this icebreaker thing in the chat. So, I'm a singer-songwriter, as Andy mentioned. I've been doing this a long time, like I think most of us on the on this call. And I don't necessarily exclusively focus on social justice tunes. Last 4 or 5 years, yeah, I have been all in. But those of us who are paying attention, if you're on this call, you care. And so, we kind of want to make this and build this conversation about, what about the people who they care, but they're not writing social justice tunes. So I want to make sure we cover that as well. So before we get started, if you could open your little chat screen, and I think maybe you could just type in, while we're going through this, I'll give mine while we're going through this. I kind of want to learn a little bit about everybody on the call. And then when we have the discussion, it'll be a little bit easier for us to have that, discussion with everyone else. So, like where are you living now? Where are you from? Do you presently use your music for good causes? And for Michael Stock, you apparently do that because you've had good people on your show. And I think one of the things that I want to learn is to find out what is the political issue that's most important to you. Because I think that it kind of centers the conversation of what we're going to talk about. So if you can just write that in the chat, that'd be helpful. All right. So I'm going to put this little chat thing over here on the side for me. All right. So let me talk a little bit about Face the Music. Face the Music is it's a collective. It's a group of folks who care, and we're doing shows for good causes. There's about 70 of us through Canada and the United States. We're not a formal organization. We're just a group of people who are trying to learn from each other. There's some of us who are absolutely applying ourselves to try and figure out how to make our performances to have a bigger impact. And what we're doing is we're sharing that in a very simple approach. So, here's our kind of like our goal. So we want to, use our performances to have an impact. And the way we do that is just this really simple approach. And this is the core of a whole bunch of different ways that we're executing this. What we do is, first of all, we choose a cause, and then whatever cause it is, we find an organization or a partner that can help us in advancing that cause. We do that anyway, whether we do that with music or not. But the idea is to team up with that partner, and then to craft, first of all, what the show is going to look like, what the call to action is going to be, how to execute the calls to action, either during the performance, before or after, to make sure that you can have the biggest impact. That is the core idea. That is the foundation for all the things that we do at Face the Music. And this is something that we can all do on our own. This is not something that there's, in some sense, it's a very simple concept. And that's I think what makes it powerful. What I found is that, when I look back at all of the artists who did, some of the iconic songs in the past, and, those great shows that we are all aware of, every opportunity where you gather, you have an opportunity to get to channel that group to take an action, right? And that's a moment where you're singing your song, where you're giving your context to the song, you're capturing that energy of the audience, you're communicating to them in ways that you can't just do with words, and you do it with music. And you can channel that into having an impact. But what you ask the audience to do is really important. And so with that, we've done a whole bunch of different things, and I'm going to go through kind of what I've done and what I've learned in the last couple of years of doing this kind of thing. And then what we've learned as a community and what we're continuing to do. And then I think open it up to everybody else. So, and before I go forward with this, so, the issues that you guys have been mentioning in the chat, Michael and Elle, they write a bunch of songs for many years, and they wrote songs of social conscience. Played a lot of progressive event. Eileen, she wrote a song, "No War Anymore." Where is my cursor? There it is. My cursor disappeared. Brant, of course, I know Brant really well, and he's been involved in Face the Music events and online, and he writes about social justice, environment, climate, and immigration. Carolyn, she goes back to voting rights and inclusion, but cover a bunch of different issues. Cheryl writes about substance use disorder, and she wrote a song, and she's got a program, Hope Loves Harmony. Penelope, she writes about the environment, the impact of war, and women's issues, forced marriages. Carolina, she writes about racial equity, mostly is the focus. And of course, Annie, she's lately interested in justice reform and advocacy and about folks who are returning home from incarceration. And Bet also, wow, has written a lot of things, you know, about the insurrection, white supremacy, domestic violence, and voting. So, you know, so I guess, you know, the point that I was trying to make with that is that, you know, there's so many issues that we collectively care about. There's so many things that, you know, for me, I didn't really put this in order except for the first two. For me, voting rights affect all of our rights. Voting rights are the foundation for us having a voice, for us having a say in what happens in government and beyond. Without voting rights, I think that, you know, our fundamental system doesn't work. So that, for me, tops the list. Because without that, we can't make progress on anything. And you can have really substantive change, maybe not everything you want, but you can have substantive change when you have policy and legislation occur. And then the next for me is climate change. But all these things, you know, are things that we likely care about. So, you know, the way that we can have an impact is through, as I said, you know, ensuring that laws get passed and that policy gets implemented. But it's a really, you know, big, messy kind of process, right? You know, with three branches of government, not just federal government, but then you have state and local. And so it's a very challenging way to kind of figure out how to have an impact. So what we did at Face the Music, and it only has to do with the activism that I decided my path on, is rather than focus on, you know, just a massive issues, I focused on state legislatures. It turns out the state legislatures passed 22 times more laws than the federal government, laws that affect us very, very personally, all of us. But you know, even when you get to a state legislator and you want to like decide, okay, I'm going to support my local state legislator and help them get elected, you know, that's just one state legislator. Well, you know, if you're going to do social justice work, how do you decide who to work with? So we partnered with a couple of different organizations, and they looked at you know, which states we can have an impact on. Then they went down to the next level. Which districts are competitive? Which candidates are competent? And, you know, which ones should we work on? So in 2020, we focused on 31 candidates. And those candidates ended up being really important in the races that we were focusing on. So to give you an example of that, you know, this is from a guy named Donnie Fowler. Donnie Fowler is a San Francisco-based political guy. You know, he gives really, really great talks. And this I took from a fairly recent talk of his that happened this year. So, you know, he mentions in 2016, the guy who was our former president, and I don't even like his name up here, but he won by a fairly slim margin. But Joe Biden actually won by a close to the same margin. And if you look at the three states that Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, he won by only 45,000 votes. Without those states, it would have been an electoral tie. Well, guess what? The campaigns that we worked on, because of the partnerships that we had, we supported candidates in all three of those states and beyond that in competitive battleground states. And, you know, I know for a fact that we significantly contributed, and I'll talk more about that. So this is the point I'm making here is that, so we through partnerships, we made good decisions of where to focus our time, our efforts, and where our music could have that impact. Okay, so this all started with a test back in 2019. In 2019, I did a 10-show music tour across Virginia. I started out in Virginia Beach, and I started playing shows for candidates. And basically what I did is I contacted local campaigns And I said, hey, I would like to do a music show for you. In some instances, I got local musicians to come and perform with me. But what we did is based on, again, by our partnership, and this is before Face the Music started really, but through a partnership with the activist organizations, they informed me about the tactics that are most effective for campaigns, which is knocking on doors. Knocking on doors is the most important thing we can do to help a campaign. So what I did is I asked the campaign to, have someone there with a clipboard and then, invite people to go knock on doors. So we had each show was, me or someone, and other artists. We would do the show. We would have the candidate come up and do a very short, 3 to 5 minute kind of stump speech. But then we would have that call to action, please volunteer for the campaign. And, I did it in my way. I talked about how what you see the candidate do, and this would be standard in every show, just like we have a show. We have a shtick in a show, right? I would say, what you'll hear the candidate say is that why they ran, what inspired them, what they want to run on, what they want to accomplish. What you won't hear the candidate say is that this takes away from their family and time with their friends. They work, not just, they work nights and weekends on the campaign. And once they get elected, and they do it for almost practically no money. State legislative campaigns, they don't earn a lot of money. It's a way that essentially that it's voted. And then what I asked the audience to do is to knock on doors. The results were unbelievably astounding to me. In the 10 shows that I did, we got more than 100 people to go knock on doors. Yes, we raised some money, but I got to play for over 500 people throughout Virginia, who didn't know me. And we got, a huge percentage of the audience, 36%, to go knock on doors. So we did very specific things to make this happen. As I said earlier, we asked the campaign to capture the people as they came in, get their contact information, but specifically have a date in mind for them to knock on doors, and then to give us the results of that. And that's how we got this data. So then in 2020, of course, things changed. And when the pandemic hit, I had this plan.
Thanks for getting back to me. I just want to check. I sent you a text.
I think we have someone talking who should be on mute. Maybe Charlie, you can help out with that.
I'm going to release everything else. So get back to me because I need to let Christina know.
There we go. Okay. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I had this plan to do this tour. I was actually going to go down and I was going to do a show on Michael Stock's show, radio show, and I couldn't do it. So we went online, and I ended up doing 31 shows. While the horror of the pandemic was happening, the truth is, and this is, kind of challenging, I had a great time. I was busy. I used the same process. I worked with partner organizations to figure out which candidates would be the right ones, which districts would be the right ones. And then I reached out to the campaigns, but I did something a little bit different. I got local artists to join me in those shows. Willie Porter in Wisconsin, Scott Cook helped in Michigan. Joe Newberry helped in a couple shows, including where he lives in North Carolina. Brant helped on a couple shows too. Where we didn't have a local person, I would bring someone else in, like Brant, because we weren't supporting. We did play one show in Tennessee where Brant is, but that would draw in local people. And what it did is it raised awareness for the campaign, which is during the pandemic where they couldn't do in-person events, it was the most effective thing we could do. They got lots of visibility for their name. And like the impressions were huge when we were able to track them on Facebook. And then we also raised a lot of money for, basically for state legislative campaigns where the budgets are very small. So additionally, we did some other shows. We did a show for the Equal Rights Amendment. And this is just to show you there's another way to use the same recipe, the same idea. We worked with the ERA in Minnesota. It's a very small local group, but then they started recruiting other groups. And the whole idea was to take that call to action, align it for all 40 of the organizations that we worked with, and then we did a big show. Now, I did not perform in that show. I just produced it. And we ended up having, Sean Lennon, Everclear, Jefferson Starship, the lead singer from Jefferson Starship, Niles Rogers dropped in and did a little talk, a little 1-minute talk about the ERA and why it's important. And then we had these amazing songs from artists, Chris Matthews, Kathy Richardson was brilliant. We had a song from Emily Ann Peterson, which was beautiful. Anyway, it was a way to take all these organizations and use a music show to reinforce a call to action. So I'll just talk about very briefly what I'm doing from here. Next month, I have a plan to go back to Virginia. I'm going to do 5 shows. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm having a larger number of candidates come and support shows. So I'm actually supporting more candidates with 5 shows than I did with 10 shows. And that way the shows will be bigger. We'll hopefully, be able to have some kind of similar results in recruiting people to knock on doors and such. But yeah, 2 of these shows are outdoors. I'm pretty confident those shows will stay. But based on what's happening with the Delta variant, we'll kind of have to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks whether we'll have to cancel those shows because things are kind of iffy in Virginia right now and through the country. Okay. So this is not the only idea that we have. Like if you're not doing live shows and you're creating a video, the community, and Brant was part of, and I think Nell, was part of this conversation where we had a little community discussion and the community came up with this idea. So what if we did a video and the video then could be, you build a partnership with some organization, create a call to action, and then post that video with the organization getting visibility for that. Well, we ended up doing this very effectively so far. We only have done it once, but it was hugely effective. On May 8th, there was a National Day of Action named after John Lewis. Well, I just came across the fact that Chris Matthews, a phenomenal singer-songwriter, social justice singer-songwriter in Northern Virginia, had written a song for John Lewis on her new album, a fantastic album, and a very powerful song. And I asked Chris if she had a video. And she said, well, I don't, but maybe this will get me off the dime if you can get me some pictures and some video. So I put the word out and I sent her a bunch of stuff that ended up in her video. And on May 8th, we showed that video and it had, about 350,000 views that we know of based on that one day, releasing it that day. Because there was a national broadcast, there was a social media storm focused on, advertising, using her song as the advertising for the National Day of Action. And the song is called Call Them In. It's a very powerful song. I suggest, maybe I'll put it in the chat before we close. But this is just another approach, aligning with an organization, creating a call to action, using that call to action then for a cause. I mean, again, it's not rocket science. There's in a sense, there's nothing new here, but it can work if you really build a partnership with an organization rather than just look at, hey, I wrote a song for climate change, and hopefully the world will come to and see my song. So I think there's value for the artist. There's significant value for the partner organizations that support the cause, and then like we did with the Equal Rights Amendment, there's enormous value of aligning a call to action between a whole bunch of organizations, right? Because they can use just a show or a video as a way to organize their grassroots efforts in a particular call to action. So, okay. I think we're ready to open this up to discussion. I'm going to stop the sharing. There's a lot of folks. If you're here, I've seen from the chat, there's a lot of you that actually do the right social justice songs. I know that, several of you have been using your songs for good causes. I'd like to hear from others. I think I've had long enough to chat about this. So who should we start with? Maybe we'll start with, if you either raise your hand or you wave, like you could raise your hand at the bottom, there's this, where's the little.
Yeah, I would say
reaction.
the raised hand function is the easiest thing because that's the thing I'm most likely to see.
Okay.
As far as calling on people, though I'll keep my eye on the entire group. And,
at the bottom of the screen, there's something called reactions in the little bar at the bottom. If you hit that and you say raise hand, it raises your hand, and if you go back into it again, you can lower your hand. I would love to hear from you guys. What are you guys doing? And there's, and I still have one story left that I didn't use. So I'll call on someone, maybe Michael and Nell.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Pete. It's great to be here with you, and we really appreciate all the work you do. So we're involved in several different organizations like the People's Music Network, which we've been on many times, which encourages social justice things. We also do something I didn't mention, which is the Joe Hill Road Show, which we have performed for several years. We've performed it 27 times live, 8 times virtually, and it's a history of the early labor movement. And it involves, 71 slides, us telling the story, and us singing about 9 songs. And that's a very interactive thing. When we love doing it in person because we get the audience to sing along. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we have not been able to do it on live, but we're looking forward because it's a solidarity building thing when you have a whole bunch of people singing together, as I'm sure all of us folkies know. So we just continue to write about a variety of issues on our album. We have an issue about the Dreamers. We have an issue, a labor song. We have an issue, what else do we have?
Fair housing.
Fair housing. I've been very involved in the affordable housing struggle here in Nashville. We write about different issues that come up for us.
Mountaintop removal.
Mountaintop removal, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then once you write those songs and you want to perform them, like it could be just part of your performance. And then, and of course you'll introduce the song and say, this is an important issue for you. That's kind of like standard fare for all of us. That's that's basically the fundamental thing that we do. Have you partnered with other organizations besides People's Music Network?
Over the years, yes. Well, like every year here in Nashville, we were down at Riverfront Park by our river. There's a ceremony for all the homeless people that died in the previous year on the streets of Nashville. The last year we performed, I think it was almost 95 people who died in this burgeoning gentrifying city on the streets. And we usually perform our song Welcome Home, which is all about housing. We perform that there. And that is sponsored by an organization called Open Table here in Nashville. And they're incredible. They got in the streets in the middle of the night and take care of homeless people. They're just amazing. But, I ran a nonprofit, a progressive organization here for 14 years. So I have connections all over with all these different organizations, around the state. Our big problem here is we got this ultra right-wing state legislature,
governor, legislature,
supermajority,
everything.
Grants nodding his head. Yes, it's it's a really uphill struggle trying to get anything done here, and you feel like Nashville's a Democratic city, and so is Memphis, and so is Chattanooga, and so is Knoxville. It's like we don't even have a voice in what's going on here now.
No, what happens here is if local government, for instance, Nashville, passes an ordinance or some legislative action which promotes something anywhere near progressive, just liberal, the state government will come in and outlaw it by some means. They'll pass some legislation, or it'll be an executive order, and in some form or fashion they will basically neutralize whatever whatever progressive or liberal
They can-
actions that Nashville wants to pursue.
Yeah, they can do that,
Yeah.
and they've done it ever since they got in there, which was in 2010.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what we are. We're faced with now, you know, but we've performed for, you know, National Peace and Justice, and we've performed for all kinds of different organizations all the time, for years, actually.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome. That's great. And I know that you guys have like this long history of doing this work. And, you know, I don't think everybody is in that same boat. You know, I mean, like, for me, I really didn't, I mean, like I raised money for diabetes when I was a kid because my parents were involved in an organization. My parents founded what became the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. But, you know, I mean, that was not like something that was part of my DNA to go, you know, do social justice stuff. So this has been a journey for me. And, you know, one of the things that Annie and I talked about when we were talking about this idea for this talk is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to have social justice music to make a difference. You know, you just have the idea of partnering with an organization that you care about and just doing a show for them. That's another way to do this, right?
yeah. Well, I was raised in San Francisco. I think I told you this, Pete.
Yeah.
And my parents met at a socialist meeting, so it comes as part of my DNA. Okay. You're still in San Francisco, right?
I am. Yeah, I moved here in 2012.
Yeah. I can't even recognize the city anymore. It's so gentrified. Oh my God.
It's a lot different than when I moved here just, you know, 9 years ago.
Yeah. If you want to get a look at San Francisco's history as an unusual city, check out a book called Season of the Witch.
Okay, Season of the Witch. I'm writing that down.
If you haven't seen it.
Yeah. Well, we'll hang up here.
All right. So, you know, maybe I'll call on Brant next. So Brant, you know, you've written some really absolutely beautiful tunes. We've done some shows together. Maybe you can just mention, you know, like a little bit about the shows that you and I have done, or, you know, some other stuff that you've done.
Yeah. And I've been an environmentalist, a forester, trained professional forester, but very conservation, environment oriented for years. So I was always trying to put that in my songs. More recently, I've always been, you know, progressive, you know, calling for candidates during the elections, making calls. But more recently, especially with the Trump years, and I've written more songs that are related to what is going on, and got more wanting to use my songs to try to make a change. And so I played Michael and Nell. Well, I played they had like a house concert to raise money for a Nashville nonprofit that they are involved with. And that was one of the first things I did in this type of thing. And of course, I played with you for the Minnesota, I believe Minnesota state candidate.
Yep.
And that was really fun and felt great. And I've listened to a lot of the shows that you've had. They're really great to have those and get the word out at that state level. I've also, and I did a show with you, a climate show. What was the group called? That's International Musicians for Climate, or?
You're talking about Music Declares Emergency.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about that as well, because that's something that's big that we all can be a part of. Matter of fact, I didn't even think of putting that link in the chat. I'll do that now.
Yeah. That was you had let us know about that organization, and you know, I signed up to be, you know, pledging that I would work for the environment in my music and try to spread the word, and sang at that event. And I've done climate rally in Nashville. I think Michael and Nell maybe at the same one, and I'm really looking for more things to do. The pandemic has kind of shut things down, and got into Zoom a lot, and learned a lot about Zoom and using that format. And I've done some Zooms where hopefully reaching an audience, but a lot of that audience has been preaching to the choir, like in the Folk Alliance type route. So, and I recently just mentioned I went to John McCutcheon's songwriting camp in mountains of North Carolina this year, and he gave some real good input about how to pull people in with your songs, and it's important. You don't want to, if you're playing out for the public and want to make a difference to people who may include all different parties. I'm learning that, trying to get a set that will have different songs, fun songs, country, love songs, cry in your beer, and then throw kind of a more gentle song to kind of get people thinking rather than hit them over the head with a hammer. So that's another way to think about it. I haven't really gotten out yet again, except for my band playing a gig, but I'd like to start getting out more and using that not only, in events and political campaigns, but with trying to get the word out when I do my shows and change a few minds.
There's a lot of artists, like hitting people over the head with a hammer. There's a lot of artists who are very concerned about being political. And, there are some ways to be political that are nonpartisan. There are organizations that focus on voter registration. And, again, you don't need to have political songs to support those organizations like Headcount or Rock the Vote. And they do shows all the time, and you can get people to come out to the show and actually register people to vote. That's getting harder and harder because some of the laws that are being passed now are stopping all organizations like that to even register voters. It is, there's an attack on the whole idea of just people being allowed to vote right now. But right now is a moment that we need to support voting rights. That's another soapbox I have. So, and Brent, man, I love the shows that we've done. They've been a lot of fun. So.
Well, same here, and I'm looking forward to getting some more things, going with Face the Music. And like I said, I'm kind of trying to get back. I'm getting back into the real world a little bit here, and the new real world. And so let's make a plan.
Let's make a plan. So so we'll make a plan, and I think for next year, looking ahead, I'm going to do a series of some online shows, but I really want to go back like we all do and do live performances. And so we'll see what the year looks like, but yeah, we'll do something next year and make sure that we, use this kind of this foundation that we built together and see if we can, make a difference. So let me go back and talk a little bit about Music Declares Emergency that Brent brought up. Music Declares Emergency was founded in the UK back in 2019. It was some artists and industry folks. And the thing that I find really appealing about it, you won't be surprised when I tell you, the idea of using calls to action. They have developed calls to action for every constituent of the music industry. They've launched in 6 countries, and next month, we're going to have a US chapter. And so there's a link that I just put in the chat. Please take a look at the website, look at the things that they're asking, not just for artists to do, but for fans to do. It was the first practical set of things that I saw that, a website was saying, here's what you can do to have an impact on climate change. Now there's a bunch since they've launched, but that was the first one that I saw. Music Declares Emergency, they're going to launch officially in the US next month. So this is the moment that you can lend your support before the launch and be part of the launch. I would ask that you not only read the declaration, and if you feel comfortable, sign on to it, but also to spread the word. Let other artists know that this is coming. Let other constituents in the music industry, we can green festivals. We can make sure touring becomes, lower carbon emissions. There's things that we can do. So So we're, Face the Music is going to develop a significant partnership with Music Declares Emergency. I'm on the working group for launching it next month. So I see there was a hand up a minute ago.
That was my hand.
Okay.
I just thought I'd input my own thoughts on this whole issue. When I write a lot of political music, and I like to be involved in different causes around the city. Tuesday night I played at an event for utility rights in the city of Cleveland, where we had a vigil for those who froze to death last winter. And utility rights are a big deal, especially in the middle of a pandemic where healthcare is, well, obviously we all need heat, and in a city like Cleveland you need heat, but you also need electricity to run CPAP machines, all kinds of issues like that. Anyway, so what I'm getting at is, for me, within the political music, it's hard for me to write a song immediately about every little issue that I believe in. So I just write what I see. I write what's in front of me. If I turn on the news, yesterday I was watching the news briefly, and the Elijah McClain story came up where the indictments came down, and the reporter covering the story broke down in tears when he realized how helpless he personally felt in this world. And that kind of thing, back when we first learned about the kids being put in cages, that kind of thing hits me, and I start writing. So once I have all these songs, what do I do with this? And I really try to think about what my purpose is for these songs and how I can best use them. So I reach out to, like you said, reaching out to groups that you want to partner with, and think about what purpose do I have at these events doing these songs? And so ultimately I come to the idea that as a musician, my purpose is to help keep their events engaging, tell the stories in as graphic a manner as possible, and try to bring people together and keep the action moving forward, using music as the vehicle to try to do that as best as we can. Because ultimately my song isn't going to change the world. They're going to change the world. So I need to keep the people who are involved in these causes engaged, excited, passionate. And that's something I can do as an artist, is to help mobilize them, because they're the people really doing the work. I'm just singing songs. Anyway, just my thoughts.
I think those are great thoughts. Matter of fact, I had that in the presentation, but I didn't show it.
Great.
Yeah, so the Face the Music is a relatively small collective of folks that are doing just what you're doing, Charlie. And I encourage all of the folks on this call, if you feel compelled, join us. We have these community discussions. We do have, we have get-togethers where we just play songs for each other, kind of talk about songwriting, talk about, different organizations that we can have an impact on. And then, and I try and involve as many artists as I can in all these crazy, these crazy events that I pull together, whether it's candidate shows or shows for the ERA. We support a bunch of different grassroots organizations. And now, we're teaming up with an organization that is part of the voting rights push. There's a coalition of 200 plus organizations that I meet with weekly. It's called Declaration for American Democracy. And through that organization, I've met this social media organization called Demcast. And what I've learned about are digital toolkits that create messaging and social media, the left is just horrible at saying the right thing at the right time. So they're creating core messaging that we can use. That doesn't mean we need to use the exact words, but we can, at least it gives us a basis for us to start, right? And then they give us really interesting graphics for us to post, and stuff we can include in newsletters and stuff and I think that becomes the fodder for us to use on stage. We should do what Charlie said, exactly what Charlie said is, bring our personal context and perspective, make those events more engaging. And then, there's what is the core message to get people to move them to action? So, yeah. So that's exactly right. Oh, great. Thank you for Brant for putting the link to submit in the chat. So, I'll just tell one more story, and then I'll see if anybody else, oh, wait, I see Bet, I'll let you go first. I see that your hand is raised.
Right. I have done some singing for organizations and done benefit concerts for the homeless people and just, voting rights and not concerts, but sung at events for them. But some of the songs that I've written, I have submitted to some national groups that have local chapters. And it's like, they blow me off, Who are you? What do you think you want to do? Come up here and sing your song for, you just want to worm and that's not it. I feel like my music might get the crowd stomping and really arouse them and get them in the mood, for a good speech or something. How does somebody who really doesn't have a name approach these organizations?
Man, that is exactly why I started doing what I did. I did the same thing that you did. I would send my songs and I wrote this song about climate change that I thought was really adorable. I used the roly-poly as a way to, give a human perspective on, this little bug that rolls up in a ball to protect itself, right?
Yeah.
And then I paid for an animated video, and climate change organizations wanted nothing to do with it. So now I use that video to promote these candidate shows. Maybe I still think that it's a great song. It's a song that I personally love, and I get a good reaction from people. But if you go straight to these organizations and just offer the song, I don't think you're really offering the thing that they can understand how to utilize. If you help them organize an event, and you give them the understanding that, and that's what I was saying about this call to action idea. They have to think through how they can get a grassroots effort moving. Not every organization thinks about that. How do you organize homeless people who don't have an address? It's just, there's so many fundamental issues with these organizations that, how do they build momentum that helps them? So I think that that is the fundamental question that folks have. And I think there's multiple ways to do it, but I think you're starting from the right place of writing a great song that gets people moving, and then figuring out ways to get there. So the video idea, the idea of organizing shows with them and having them, maybe it's multiple organizations. So those are just some ideas.
Okay.
And then I see Annie has her hand up.
Wow, I suddenly lost sound.
There you go. We hear you now.
Okay. Hi. Well, thank you. Thanks. I wasn't sure if I was still going to be able to stick around, but the conversation was so engaging that, and I actually want to ask some questions. First of all, this has been really awesome. I have been thinking about all the benefit concerts that I've been participating in over the years, and there's just so many thoughts, but one that comes to mind, and this might not be relative to what we are talking about right now, but financially speaking, we as artists, we can be reaching an audience that has nothing to do with the cause that we are singing about. You can be reaching out to people at a show that you're getting paid for at any other time. Do you know what I mean? Like I think what I'm trying to say is sort of in response to Bet as well, that we may not be able to jump on the bandwagon of a big benefit concert that's happening, but we ourselves with our songs and our audiences can be speaking to our causes every time we go out and play. It doesn't have to be a very specific show that we're doing for that and on behalf of that. And I've experienced that myself because I did write a song that was directly associated with the cause that I believe in. And I was able to use that song to shine some light on that cause. So, but I am also curious about people that really get into performing for causes specifically. Is there a living in that? I mean, are you destined to play a lot of free shows in that way? And not that there's anything wrong with that, because I do it all the time. So I think, practically speaking, I'm curious to know if there's ever a way to also earn some money while you're shining a light on your cause and you're doing that. And if you do that. So.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Nell and Michael have a response to that, but it looks like Charlie might have a response to it.
Cool.
I'm going to quote Woody Guthrie. I've never played a bad cause, and that was in response to somebody asking him to play for free for a good cause. And his attitude was, well, you do have to, I need to eat, and I don't play for bad causes. So, you can sell your cause as good as possible, but I still need to eat. And I've found most of the organizations that I will step up and do shows for will, they're either big enough and they volunteer to pay me, or they're so small and so grassroots that I am extraordinarily aware of the fact that I am a volunteer, just because we know that there's no, the utility rights thing the other day. I'm a volunteer for that. Cleveland Peace Action 3 weeks ago did a vigil for Hiroshima, Nagasaki victims and survivors, and a call to action to never let it happen again. Cleveland Peace Action has a budget, and they took care of me. So it's sort of an awareness of what the organization is, but I like to think in terms of Woody Guthrie. I don't play bad causes.
That's great.
That's a great quote. I love it. And well, sometimes we get paid. A lot of times we don't.
Most of the times we don't.
Yeah, but one of our goals is to try to educate people a little bit. Not here in Nashville, musicians are exploited like you wouldn't believe it. Our musicians down on Lower Broadway, they keep this whole tourism industry going, and they're out there with their little tip jar, and they don't get paid shit by the clubs. The clubs are making all the money, and they have to go out there and beg for money. So part of it is trying to raise some awareness. And of course, we've played for free a lot of times. And I just want to mention David Rovix. Do you guys know who David Rovix? He's doing a workshop today, actually, for People's Music Network, starting at what time?
4:00 Central Time.
4:00 Central Time, 5:00 Eastern Time, and he's doing a 3-part workshop on how to be a troubadour in the age of crowdsourcing. Mm-hmm. So if you know who David Rovix is, he lays out how he does it.
Check it out.
He lays a lot of benefits, but a lot of times he'll work with the organization. Look, I need $500 to do this, and anything over that you guys get. He has, and he plays hundreds and hundreds of benefits, and he's kept this going for like 30 years.
Yeah, there is that notion of partnering with another organization and making an agreement on whatever split that you want to take from the proceeds. But to what I think Bet was talking about, we have run into here a situation where we wrote a song. It's called Welcome Home.
Title cut on our album.
And there's an organization that we've worked for, which I won't name. We've worked with, and Nell has been very involved in the past. And we went to the expense of recording and making a video, the whole deal, and we got basically no support from this. We were looking for at first some a little financial support, because it costs a bit of money to make videos and make something quality, which it was. But then even just trying to present the song and have it used as a tool for awareness, we got pushback, which was such as, well, you just want to
promote yourself.
Promote your song.
You know, that
and it was very petty and small-minded reaction that we got. And I was personally just turned off by what
But
we
you know,
heard.
we have to understand all these. I know because I've been in the trenches. All these organizations are always struggling financially. You know, and there's this competition for grants, and you have to. I don't even want to go into it all. It's a mess. You know, so you have to take into consideration.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even really at the money conversation at that point. It was just at the do you want to use this to help your organization to.
They just didn't
to
get
reach
it.
people. They just didn't
get
understand, which is very surprising because Nashville, of course, is Music City. But there is this.
Two people have their hand up, so we did quick.
Huh?
Two people have their hand up, so we should make
Okay.
it quick.
Well, there is this kind of desperation among artists. Everybody wants to be heard and seen, and so there's that attitude. Well, you just want to get your song promoted.
I mean, it's a difficult path. I mean, really, there really is not a simple answer. I mean, for an artist, whether you're doing songs for social justice or not, it's a challenge to make money in music these days. And getting an audience to come see you. But the thing is the thing I've been doing, I've been getting people to come see me regularly that normally would not. I mean, like a lot of people. And it's an excuse to get, publicity. You can ask Michael Stock right there. I mean, I was on his show talking about this stuff, and there are certain there is an angle there. Okay, so Cheryl had her hand up. I want to make sure that we get a few others' input.
Hi.
There you go.
Yes, I just saw somebody put in the chat Music to Life. That is who helped me launch my program, Hope Loves Harmony. They are accepting applications right now. And what they do is they take artists in their own communities and help them to develop programs that they can bring to life. And they support you the entire way, both financially and emotionally, everything, training, blah, blah. It was an amazing experience. One of the coolest things I've ever gone through. You do have to apply to it and get accepted. And they are accepting applications as we speak.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, that's something really cool. I kind of am still doing the same thing. I actually have a grant pending at the moment. I'm not a 503c or any of that stuff. I just have my own program that's completely ready to launch. It's done. I'm in the grant seeking phase. Anyway, it's worth checking into. Thanks so much. This has been great.
Thank you. I applaud what Music to Life has been doing. But they also have a small number of applicants they can accept. So if I encourage folks to apply.
It's been growing. It's now national. It was regional.
Yes.
It is now national.
Excellent.
And it just keeps getting bigger. And they recruit people who have gone through the program, so that it can continue to grow and get bigger and better.
And the thing that I particularly love what they do is they do exactly what you said, is they help artists look for ways to make their social justice work viable financially, right?
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say, respond to Annie on that, is that one of the very first things they say in the program is your art is not free.
Yes. Yeah.
Who doesn't love that in this room?
Okay.
Thank you.
I think Eileen, you had your hand up. Yeah, you have to take yourself off mute. There you go.
Just done that. Yeah, thank you. This is great discussion. I've taken a slightly different approach to this. Many of the paid gigs, I'm singing the songs that are of social, areas of interest. And in addition to that, instead of using it to make money for myself, I've utilized it to make money for very specific organizations. And so several years back, I had written No More War Anymore, and I created a 501c3 to support Doctors Without Borders, the IRC, which is International Rescue Committee, and Shelter Box. I had made a video, And I have different paraphernalia that also is No More War anymore, anywhere from the stickers to these little things. But anyway, a certain amount of that goes to these organizations. And I vetted the organizations very carefully. So I think there's different ways. One is to be actively engaged in these organizations that do that. Another is to be sort of in the background supporting some of the work that's done for that. And so again, I've just taken a slightly different approach. I agree that, I'm not doing free shows. I'm paid, but I'm using that platform at that time to do that. Also, No More War Anymore was written so that it was somewhat anthemic, and I did it on purpose so that people would feel engaged to sing with me. Right. And, I would say all the time that it happens whether I invite them or not. They just kind of sing along. So I think that kind of thing where you're getting personal community action with your audiences is another way to really powerfully engage, where they're not just listening to you, they're part of that. And so that's just my 2 cents. I mean, I want to investigate all these other avenues. Today, I reached out to Elizabeth Warren and asked for a Zoom meeting. I'm really I'm so angry at Texas right now. I'm so angry. I'm one of those that I was at the Chicago convention. I was a student in Chicago at the time, so I was there. I was there for all those political things. I have fought this battle before, and I cannot believe we're in it again. Yep. So my next thing is to take this beyond a song. I actually have a bill that I want to create, and I cannot share it with you right now, but I'm looking for the right people to take this. It's actually to engage from a different angle to smack down what's happening in our various states. And by the way, I'm in Florida where Death Santis reigns. And, it's really pretty ugly here on many, many fronts. So I'm fired up, but I'm going to the top this time. I'm not going behind my songs and waiting. I don't feel I have the time to do that.
So Eileen, we should connect for next year. Florida is the top of my list. I grew up in Florida.
Oh, great. Call me.
I am going to do shows for state legislative candidates, and I have a couple connections into the Senate and governor's race.
Would you contact me later today? I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you. Seriously, because I'm moving on that as fast as today. I mean, I'm waiting to see if she'll give me a Zoom, but I'll take anybody.
Okay.
Get it going, especially from Florida. That's fine. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. Charlie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to reflect on people wondering, how do you target these songs, and how do you, for me as a middle-aged white guy, and my only real sense of being left out of the conversation is that I'm disabled. So I have that when I come to conversations. But if I show up to an organization and say, I want to sing about immigration rights and women's rights and March for Your Life and Black Lives Matter, there has to be a few people in that room looking at me saying, is this our voice? Is this the person we want to carry that voice? And with that in mind, I find it helpful to be able to partner also with younger people, with people who are closer personally to those subjects, and maybe co-writing with them. I think it's natural for people to question your motivations. So, I'm sure there are plenty of songwriters who wrote songs that seemed good intention, but in the end, they were hoping to maybe profit off it. And I'm sure that happens. I'm not going to accuse anybody of that, but I'm sure that there are people who look for trends in the music industry, because that's what we do. We look for trends, and then they try to jump on that trend. And so partnering with groups, kids, offering the song, and almost taking yourself out of it may also help out a little bit when it's possible that for myself, I could be perceived as middle-aged white guy, not necessarily the voice of the revolution.
I feel the same way, Charlie. I mean, like, when I get affected, as I think most of us on this call do, which is the reason why we're doing this, right? When we see something that happens that is really unjust and horrible, and then we want to give voice to it with music, and sometimes it can feel inauthentic to do it, and it's so hard to come up with that angle where you can give your voice, and it seems to resonate with people. With me, I use sarcasm sometimes, and sometimes that does not come across well, and I know that I'm very aware of it. But so yeah, it's, and I love the ideas that you have as well. Team up with young people to co-write. That, and get them, and look at young person organizations and see if there's a way to support them. Those are great ideas. Annie, you did have your hand up, but no longer. Did you still want to make a comment?
Yes. In my tiny little corner of the room here.
Oh, no.
First of all, well, to be honest with you, I started having this weird thought, because activism and everything that we've been talking about has been a very, very progressive, very left-leaning. Everything that we've been talking about has been certainly of the same kind of mind. And I'm very curious, do we ever hear about activism in performance and songwriting that leans in the other direction? And our community tends to be, fairly liberal, fairly progressive in general, but every now and then we get somebody who chimes in and says, not all of us think the same way. And I think it is kind of important that we keep that in mind as we very, very emphatically talk about our strong feelings of certain things, which I think is, again, we're having this conversation for that reason. But I am curious if anybody has ever come across this.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I have numerous folks. I mean, not just people who you don't agree with, but there's artists that they vehemently disagree with partisan things that I believe in, and then there's artists who find that center, and they just hold to that center and try and be as inclusive as possible. Like Scott Cook is a really great example, who does that very effectively, even though from reading his book. Yeah, Scott Cook's book is not far from my desk. Tangle of Souls, I recommend it highly. It's not just his book. This is his liner notes of his album. But he does a really great job of finding that center and then writing from that perspective. And you could be very inclusive by doing that. I made a decision that because I really tried. I genuinely for decades, I tried to have those conversations and try and find the common ground. And I think there's value in that. But I also don't believe that that's what's needed in this moment. Because I think we then use our time, the precious time and our precious resources, where we're just going to have we're going to basically have the same conversations that we've been having for the last couple decades and not actually make a difference. And I find that to be a bit sad, but I also, I just don't know another way out of the mess that we're in. And that's why I am so vehement. I mean, so we're when they say music declares emergency, they use that phrase specifically because if we don't stop carbon emissions, there's going to be mass death. I mean, this is not in question. There's going to be.
And let's face it. climate change, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be political.
It
Shouldn't
shouldn't.
be a right versus left. It shouldn't be a thing. This is a life. And like if that isn't, that's part of what I think we all, maybe many of us, find so frustrating, that there's so many issues that shouldn't be even remotely political. There shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like so I want to say one last thing, and then I'm going to get out of the way, because I appreciate what you think. But the other thing I was going to add was that we did a show on Sunday. It was just a songwriter in the round. It was a bunch of us playing. I didn't play anything remotely political. At the end of the show, these folks that have been coming to see us for a long time, one guy came up and he says to me, "You guys made me change sides." And I'm like, what does that mean? But it was just seriously him coming out to the shows, enjoying the music, just enjoying the music, was touched enough and was moved enough by the songs that were thinly veiled in whatever it was that were. And he flipped. And so anybody, one person at a time. So I'm just here to say, I never intended, I didn't reach out to that guy, and I didn't have any conversations with him. He just was moved to.
I so love that. And I so love that you said that. I can't stress that, we need, all of the voices from all the context to bring, the human perspective, the empathy, there's the story that I haven't told. I'll just give it real briefly, and then Brant has his hand up. So there's a song that I wrote, has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with, it was the first song that I wrote that was truly centered in someone else's perspective. And I introduced that song, and many of us, I'm sure, have been to the Folk Alliance that Billy Bragg spoke at for his keynote back in 2017. And I basically take a little bit of what he said, the core of his idea. Matter of fact, Scott Cook, in his Tangle of Souls book, actually uses that as kind of the point, one of the main points he's making in his book. And it basically says that, a real enemy is not communism or capitalism or whatever ism that, you have an issue with. It's cynicism. And it's that feeling that nothing is ever going to change. And the answer to cynicism is empathy. And, you can't get empathy until you can write from another perspective, or at least understand things from another perspective. And I use that as kind of the transition point from my pop, love songs to my political songs. And I think we can all do that. So Annie, that example was awesome. I love that. Brant, you have your hand up.
Yeah. I do think, we all need to try to reach out to our friends and folks, wherever, who are other side of the political spectrum, and try to talk. That's an important thing. We need to do that. But I agree, we need to do something now about issues that are important. But I also think, and we've talked about this, Pete, in some of the meetings about how we're going to do, Face the Music, and about, trying to get people involved who are not necessarily Democrats or liberal, but who have causes that are, something everybody can, be for. Like, there are issues that both, Democrats and Republicans, diseases, poverty, just not, bring it into a middle of the road format, and then, trying to bring in people like that who would promote this understanding and kind of a exchange of ideas. We're trying to have there been any people reaching out to Face Music who are supporting certain causes, who wanted to do anything, who were not of our political persuasion?
I haven't run into artists submitting their information, or that I've certainly haven't recruited people from the other side. Because I have my agenda, and my agenda is pretty obvious. If you saw where I'm focused, but would I exclude someone who did not agree with us? No, I would not. I think the core idea is to use music for good causes. And I would encourage someone who didn't agree with me politically, as long as they didn't support, things that were exclusionary in terms of, if they were racist or homophobic or whatever it might be. There's very explicit rules that we have. But otherwise, yeah, I would encourage people who don't agree with to be part of Face the Music and use music to make progress. Absolutely. So, just because, and there are issues, like you said, Brant, and I mentioned this before, voting rights is a really good example. On most of the country, almost all of the country agrees that everybody should have the opportunity to vote, unless you're a complete partisan. and then you're just, then that's an issue that I'm not going to agree with someone. I really don't want them involved. It's like someone who's going to minimize voting rights. Yeah, that shouldn't be that should be a line that we have. But mostly there are and diseases. Like we want to make progress to help cure diseases. Including COVID.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in there that we welcome people of other political persuasions to be involved in causes that we all can promote.
Absolutely.
That's great, Grant. I love that so much.
And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That. I just wanted to chime in and say, like, we're down. Oh, Michael's hand was up. No, it's not.
Yeah, let's hear from Michael, and then
we'd love to hear from you, and then we got to start thinking about wrapping up here. I'm sure this conversation could carry on, but we got to finish up.
Well, I had a reaction come last February, whenever the insurrection was. I wanted to play protest music and encourage people to get out there and express themselves. But then when you think about the insurrection and voter fraud, those people are out there protesting and getting their voices heard. And those were voices I didn't want to hear, quite frankly. So I was kind of couldn't decide whether to encourage the people to get out there and to express themselves.
Wow. Yeah. Really, I thought about that too. I mean, like for a great number of those people, they genuinely believe that the election was fraudulent. And I can understand that. I mean, I had questions about the 2016 election, I mean, it just seemed to me like, how could Trump have won? And, the election must be in question. But then our leaders did not follow that path. But yeah, I told Michael, that is exactly right. It's a very difficult thing. Yep. So Annie.
Me and my muting. I just have to say, this has been a really amazing conversation. And if, I don't want to cut anybody off. If you got a few more minutes, if anybody wants to chime in, but for those of you who came just to listen, thank you so much for being here. Those of you who chimed in, lots of really great thoughts and comments. And I'd like to continue this conversation and do a follow-up at some point. So keep an eye out for that. Pete, I can't thank you enough for sharing. I'm going to let you, I don't want to cut you off. You have a few more things to say before I give the spiel that wraps us up.
So I'll just say this, my focus moving forward is going to be the two areas that I outlined. Right now, voting rights underlies everything that we do. And, there's a lot of issues that I think as collectively as a community, we can make a difference. If we focus people's attention on getting the Senate to pass the For the People Act, it's going to happen. The question is what will that legislation look like? And we can have a role to influence that right now. And that will affect the things that, Eileen's concerned with in Texas. Absolutely. So sign up for Face the Music. I do not spam the mail list. I send, very specific calls to action. I think what we're going to do is when Music Declares Emergency launches, we're going to continue to develop these partnerships with other organizations and develop digital toolkits that will allow performers to craft calls to action and interact with their fans more effectively. And then, we'll take input from everybody, take the best ideas of what we've done. I think if Music to Life can help us be more sustainable in financial ways, let's take those ideas. We really need to learn from the community. And I think this is how we make a difference together. So thank you, Annie and Charlie, for allowing me to have this conversation. And thank you all for joining. It's so great to see familiar faces, but also a bunch of people that I don't know. And I look forward to getting to know you.
Thanks. And put Charlie on the spotlight so he can do our wrap up. And I'm going to post some stuff in the chat.
All right. Well, thank you, Pete, for being here and providing this this conversation, for pulling us all in and allowing us to be a part of this conversation. So it's an important conversation because we have an important role in this world as citizens and humans and as musicians to rehumanize a lot of these issues, which sometimes get lost. And as musicians and songwriters, we really have that ability. So thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. Real quick, I want to let everybody know we have a registration open now. You can now register for our virtual event, our connecting event, the Virtual Connections event in October, the last weekend of October. Go to farmfolk.org and you can find the registration link there. We also, and it's going to be a great event. Annie's been working very hard to put everything together. And hopefully based on our track record over the past year and a half, you will agree that Annie is going to put together a pretty good event that we can all look forward to. So we're excited. So please go sign up for that. Also, we're in the middle of a big fundraising drive, and that's important to us because we have costs. We have operating budgets that we need to stick to. And in years past, we were primarily funded through the registrations to our big conference every year. We haven't had that for 2 years. So we find ourselves trying to reimagine how we do things. And part of that is a little more fundraising than we've ever done before. So we want to encourage everybody to think about everything we've been able to provide in the past, 20 years. And think about how much you want to continue to see these things presented and Farm's involvement in your musical life, and support us moving forward. And there's a link on our webpage for that too. Okay, I'm done with my commercials. But those are both important commercials, so please do keep them in mind. But overall, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's been great. Thank you, Annie, for putting this together. Thank you, Pete, for presenting, and thank you all for participating. Do you have anything else to say, Annie?
We're going into gallery view. Everybody, wiggle your fingers and your hands and say this is a big thank you to Pete. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see your faces, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great afternoon. Thanks, Pete. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.